Have you ever walked away from an argument replaying everything in your head, thinking of the perfect response you should have said? Or maybe you've been in the middle of one, your heart racing, your words tangled, watching the other person dominate the conversation even when you know you're right. But here's the uncomfortable truth. What if winning an argument has nothing to do with being right? And what if the people who always seem to win are playing a completely different game? Before we dive in, do me a quick favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick with me till the end. Because what you're about to learn won't just change how you argue. It can transform your confidence, your relationships, and yes, even your love life. Let me tell you a quick story. A few years ago, I knew someone who never raised his voice, never got emotional, never rushed to defend himself. Yet somehow, he always walked away from arguments and control. At first, it didn't make sense. People disagreed with him, challenged him, even insulted him. But instead of fighting harder, he did something strange. He slowed down, he listened, and then he responded in a way that made the other person question themselves. That's when I realized this wasn't about arguing. This was strategy. And oddly enough, many of these strategies echo the timeless wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled not just an empire, but himself. So if you've ever wanted to win arguments, even when you're technically wrong, here are 10 powerful Stoic-inspired principles that will completely change the way you approach conflict. Let's begin. The first principle: control yourself, not the outcome. Most people enter arguments with one goal: win. But that desperation to win, it's exactly what makes you lose. When your voice gets louder, your emotions take over. Your logic weakens. Marcus Aurelius believed that you cannot control others, only your own mind. So instead of trying to force a victory, you shift your focus inward. You slow your breathing, you choose your words carefully. And suddenly, while the other person is reacting, you're thinking. That alone puts you ahead. Second, let them talk more than you do. This sounds counterintuitive, right? How can you win by saying less? But think about it. People don't argue to find truth. They argue to feel heard. So when you interrupt, correct, or overpower them, you trigger resistance. But when you let them speak fully, something interesting happens. They start revealing weaknesses in their own argument. They repeat themselves, they contradict themselves, and you don't even have to attack. You just calmly point it out. Winning isn't about talking more, it's about listening better. Third, agree strategically. Now this one feels almost wrong. Agreeing in an argument? Yes. Because agreement doesn't mean surrender, it means control. When you say, "You might be right about that," you disarm the other person. Their guard drops, the tension lowers, and now, instead of a fight, you've created space for influence. You're no longer an opponent. You're someone they can trust. And from that position, you can guide the conversation anywhere. Fourth, never argue facts. Argue perception. Here's the truth. Facts rarely change minds. People believe what they feel is true. So instead of throwing facts like weapons, you shift the conversation. You ask questions. How do you see it this way? What makes you feel that's true? Now you're not attacking, you're exploring. And as they explain, they often begin to doubt themselves, because when people hear their own reasoning out loud, flaws become obvious. Fifth, stay calm, especially when they don't. Nothing gives you more power in an argument than emotional stability. When the other person gets louder, more aggressive, more defensive, and you stay calm, it creates a psychological imbalance. They feel out of control. You appear composed, and naturally, observers, if any, begin to side with you. Even the person arguing with you starts to feel it. Your calmness becomes authority. Sixth, don't aim to be right. Aim to be respected. Winning an argument doesn't always mean proving your point. Sometimes it means leaving the conversation with dignity. Think about it. Have you ever seen someone win an argument but lose respect? They were aggressive, dismissive, arrogant, technically right, but socially defeated. Stoicism teaches us that character matters more than victory. So instead of asking, "How do I win?" ask, "How do I carry myself in a way that earns respect?" That mindset alone changes everything. Seventh, use silence as a weapon. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it. They over-explain. They weaken their position. But silence is powerful. When you make a point, pause, let it sit, let them think, let them respond first. Silence creates pressure, and often, the other person starts backtracking just to break it. You don't need more words. You need better timing. Eighth, redirect, don't confront. Direct confrontation creates resistance, but redirection creates curiosity. Instead of saying, "You're wrong, try this. That's interesting. But have you considered this?" Now you're not attacking, you're inviting. And when people feel invited, they listen. This small shift turns conflict into conversation, and conversation is where influence happens. Ninth, know when to walk away. Not every argument is worth winning. Some people don't want truth, they want validation. And no matter what you say, they won't change. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, "Don't waste time on what you can't control." So if the conversation is going nowhere, if emotions are too high, if logic is gone, you walk away, not because you lost, but because you chose peace over pointless conflict. And that is real strength. Finally, the 10th principle, reframe the definition of winning. Let's be honest. If your goal is to dominate, embarrass, or defeat the other person, even if you win, you lose something deeper. Trust, connection, respect. But if your goal is to understand, stay composed, and guide the conversation, then every argument becomes an opportunity to grow, to practice control, to build influence. And sometimes, the biggest win isn't proving someone wrong. It's leaving them thinking, quietly questioning themselves, long after the conversation ends. Now let's bring this all together. Imagine this. You're in a heated argument. The other person is talking, fast, getting emotional, trying to overpower you. Old you would react, interrupt, defend, escalate. But this time, you pause. You listen. You nod slightly. You let them finish. Then calmly you say, "I understand what you're saying, and you might have a point." They soften. You ask a question. They think. You stay composed. They get slightly frustrated. You remain steady. And suddenly, the entire dynamic shifts. You're no longer part of the chaos. You're controlling the rhythm of the conversation. That's not luck. That's mastery. And here's the deeper truth. These principles don't just help you win arguments. They make you more attractive, more confident, more respected. Because people aren't drawn to those who shout the loudest. They're drawn to those who stay calm under pressure, who speak with intention, who don't need to prove themselves, because their presence already does. And that's where your love life begins to change too, because communication is everything. The way you handle disagreement, the way you respond under stress, the way you make someone feel heard, that's what builds connection. That's what builds attraction. So the next time you find yourself in an argument, don't rush to win. Slow down, observe, apply these principles, and watch what happens, because the real secret isn't winning every argument. It's becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.